Chapter 1, 2, and 3.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Monday night bonus class. Tonight's going to be a short one. If you have any questions, please text them to me, or you can ask them. Tomorrow night, remember, we're going to be doing the chapter on appraisals. So tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we're going to be doing the chapter on appraisals. Tonight, this is chapter, we're going to do 1, 2, and a little bit on 3. And this is a class that we do have recordings of, other recordings on this class. And these, chapter 1 and 2, there's not too many questions on the test. Chapter 3, there's about 25 to 30 questions on the test. So we'll get some of chapter 3 done tonight, but it's going to be a short class tonight. It's just a bonus class for the last day of summer. And tomorrow's the first day of fall. So I guess we got to be resigned to the fact that winter is coming.
No.
Okay, so let's get started. I'm Bruce Parker. This is the Best School of Real Estate. We're here for the 75-hour salesperson's class. The way the class works is we do 75 hours. Technically, we have to do 60 hours because we're allowed to have some missed hours for things like illness or for things like you can't make a class. We run the class from 6 o'clock to 6:30 to read the chapters, from 6:30 to 8:30 for the lecture, and from 8:30 on for questions and going over any specific things that you want to review. By the way, this phone number here at the bottom is very important. When you're ready to be signed out, you're going to text this phone number and we will sign you out. Now, unfortunately, we have to sign you out a very specific computer that's in the Old Bridge office. So you may need to set up an appointment to get signed out. We can't just call or text and expect to be signed out in 10 minutes. We might have to wait until we get into the office to use that computer to sign you out. But again, text or call that number, 732-266-3366. Essentials of New Jersey Real Estate is the books that we use. It's the Kovacs edition. Every chapter in the book is important, and we will strive to go over every chapter a number of times. So, the history of real estate in New Jersey, of course, the American indigenous people lived here first, but the first Western Europeans that came in just to settle were the Dutch, and the Dutch met the Lenape Indians. There's the old historical anecdote about the Dutch buying Manhattan Island from the Lenape Indians for $24. Who knows whether that's true or not. But anyway, the Dutch were the first ones, first Western Europeans to colonize this area. Around 1524, Giovanni di Verrazzano became the first European to explore New Jersey. He sailed along the coast and anchored off of Sandy Hook. By the way, recognize the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge? Well, that's because Mr. Verrazzano discovered that New York Harbor for the Western Europeans. The colonial history of New Jersey started after Henry Hudson sailed through Newark Bay in 1609, and then, of course, up through the Hudson River. He worked for the Dutch, and therefore he did claim the property for the Dutch. Originally, it was called New Netherlands. The Dutch lost New Netherlands. Well, they kind of ceded it or sold it to the British after they lost the war. The British divided it into two half colonies. One gave one to Sir George Carteret, That's where the town of Carteret gets its name. He was in charge of the east side. And Lord Jim Berkeley was in charge of the west side, and we have a Berkeley Township. That's where that name comes from. He was in charge of the west side. The island was officially named New Jersey after the Isle of Jersey in the English Channel. Mr. Carteret had also been the first governor, or had been a governor of the Isle of Jersey in England. I always like to talk about George Washington when we talk about real estate and the history of real estate. George Washington was a trained surveyor before he was a colonel in the British Army and then a general in the American Army. He subdivided some of the land he was given as pay and sold it off to his other officers, and that makes him a real estate agent. Here's a copy of a historical deed for George Washington, and these are all the different plots of land that he surveyed off and sold for a commission, which again makes him a real estate agent. Now, in chapter 1, one word that you have to remember, and that one word that you have to remember is that New Jersey operates on an allodial system. New Jersey operates on a an allodial system. We are having people who ask that we please all remain on mute. And I'm going to make sure that we mute everybody right now. I do hope that you can still hear me, but I'm muting everyone else. We've got somebody in the waiting room here. Let's let them in. And Rachel is in the waiting room, but I am having a problem. I'm having a problem admitting Rachel. Or maybe she's joining already, so I'm so sorry. We'll see what happens. It looks like she got in. Okay, good. So we're on an allodial system in New Jersey. The important thing about an allodial system is it means we transfer real property by deed. So in New Jersey, the mechanism, the method, the tool we use to transfer real property or rights and interests in real property is a deed, or a allodial stake. In New Jersey, when you have real estate, you have the land that God gave us to the center of the earth below, to the heavens above, and all things attached by man or nature. Some of the things that are attached by nature, according to some of our concepts, are our bundle of rights. And a bundle of rights are the rights that go along with the ownership of real property ownership. Some of them that are especially important is the right to refuse to sell or the right to sell. These two sticks in the bundle of rights is what allows flippers and wholesalers to operate. And we talk about the contracts chapter, the chapter on contracts. We'll talk about how this really comes into play and why it's so important. But these are our bundle of rights, and all of the chapters in the book are really about, somehow or another, about this bundle of rights. We are also a caveat emptor state. Caveat emptor means buyer beware. We're a buyer beware state. That means that the buyer is responsible for finding out everything he needs to find out about a property. The buyer is responsible. The buyer is responsible for finding out who the owner is, and the buyer does that by getting a title search. The buyer is responsible for finding out the survey, the property boundaries. He does that by getting a survey. The buyer is responsible for finding out what's wrong with the house. He does that by getting a home inspection. But we are a buyer beware state, a caveat emptor state. Caveat emptor means buyer beware, and we're a buyer beware state. We are also a lien theory state in New Jersey. In a lien theory state, the buyer gets a deed, even though there's a mortgage on the property. That mortgage then creates a lien on the property that goes on the deed. So the buyer gets a deed with a lien on it for the mortgage. So we are a lien theory state. As you can see, there's blue states here and red states here. The blue states are lien theory states, and the red states are deed of trust or title theory states. So again, we are a lien theory state. Other states are title theory states. We are also a judicial foreclosure state. And that means in order to foreclose on a property, you have to get in front of a judge, a judicial foreclosure state. And in New Jersey, we foreclose under the New Jersey Fair Letters Foreclosure Act. The way we get in front of a judge in New Jersey, if you're trying to foreclose, if you are a lender and you are trying to foreclose, the way we get in front of a judge is by filing a lis pendens, Lispendens, a lis pendens. In Latin, lis pendens means notice of suit pending, notice of lawsuit pending. So we're a judicial foreclosure state, and we foreclose with a strict foreclosure. The New Jersey Fair Letters Foreclosure Act is the law that dictates how lenders or mortgage holders foreclose in the event of a default on a mortgage. And remember, the lender is the one who gets the mortgage. The lender is the one who gets the mortgage and holds on to the mortgage. That mortgage is a hypothecation or a security of a debt, and it allows the holder of the mortgage, the lender, to foreclose on the property in the event of a default by the mortgage, or the person who gives a mortgage is the buyer or the borrower. And in the event of a default, then the mortgage holder, who is the lender, the one who has the mortgage, is the lender that allows them to foreclose on the mortgagor. All right, so that's chapter 1. Easy chapter. Only a couple of questions. Caveat emptor is a possible question. Lien theory of state is a possible question. And allodial state is a definite question. That is chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the National Association of Realtors. And I want to urge that the National Association of Realtors, or becoming a realtor, is just a trade organization. You guys are here for your salesperson's license that's granted by the state of New Jersey, the Department of Banking and Insurance, through the Real Estate Commission. So you're here for a governmental license. The Realtors is just a club. It's a trade organization. It's the largest trade organization in the United States. National Association of Realtors, there's their trademark. You can only use this trademark if you are indeed a member of the Realtors. You can only call yourself a realtor if indeed you are a member of the Realtors. You can be a real estate agent without being a member of the Realtors. In order to use the Realtor logo, you have to be a real estate, you have to be a member of the Realtors. In order to use the Realtor logo, you have to be a member of the Realtors. How do you become a member of the Realtors? You pay $425 and you promise to obey their rules, and you commit yourself to mediation and binding arbitration. National Association of Realtors, it was first started in 1917. This is a picture from 1917. It was called the Real Estate Exchange on 1908. So it's older than, by far, than real estate licensing law in New Jersey. As a matter of fact, we just passed the 100th anniversary of this organization forming in 2017. So we just passed the 100th anniversary. Again, the Realtors is a trade organization or a club, and their purpose is to have a standard of behavior and consequences and mediation and arbitration to settle disputes, among other things. They have a convention, and they sponsor training, and they have a library. So there are some benefits that the Realtors afford you. One of the benefits is the NARRPR. NARRPR is something that the Realtors puts together and maintains. NARRPR, it's the National Association of Realtors. It's the Realtors Property Resource. And what this does is they maintain a database of all the properties in the country that have sold and what they sold for and who's the owner and who sold it. Very, very useful when you're trying to look up a piece of property. And again, you can only get this information, you can only go into this website if you are a realtor. So you could get a real estate license and not be a realtor. But if you get a real estate license and you are not a realtor, then you can't afford yourself of any of the benefits, which means you wouldn't get a login credential for the NARRPR site. Next thing is, when you join the Realtors, you promise to obey a code of ethics. On the real estate exam, there are no questions about ethics because that's not part of the New Jersey licensure law. The code of ethics is written and judged by the Realtors. So when you join the Realtors, there's a code of ethics. It's about a 20-page document that explains your expected behavior between yourself and other real estate agents who are Realtors, and between yourself and the public. And again, the Realtors also has a method for settling disputes on commissions between competing real estate agents from separate companies. They have mediation, and then they have binding arbitration. If you've done something bad with the Realtors, if somebody turns you in, or there's a commission dispute about who is the procuring cause, and then you go to the Realtors to get a decision. Okay, again, there's that number if you want to sign out, 732-266-3366. A couple of things about signing out. When you sign out, you have 1 year from the day we sign you out to pass your test, get fingerprinted, and hang your license with a broker. Previously, I used to tell people that they never made any exceptions for that 1 year. But now with Corona, they are making some exceptions, but don't expect those exceptions to continue. So when I sign you out, you really want to try to get your test passed, get your license activated, and hung with a broker. Rules as far as the class goes. If I sign you out, you can still continue to keep coming to class. If I sign you out and 6 months later you decide you want to take the test, but you're afraid that you may not have all the information still in your head, you're welcome to come back in and sit in on the class. Now, the only exception to that is if we go back to in-person school, which is not going to be for a long time, but if we go back to in-person school, if you're already been signed out, you can come back to the class as long as there is a seat available. Because prior to COVID, we only had 25 people at a time in class, and sometimes the class was completely full. But again, as long as it's COVID and we have these online classes, you're welcome to sit in on the class. If you have a friend who wants to sit on the class just to see what it's like, send me their email, and I invite them to sit in on the class. I also record the classes, and sometimes they're a little difficult to edit, so I edit them after I record them, and I will send them out to you piecemeal. If you have a specific request for a specific chapter we did or a class we did, send me a message and I'll try to send you that one. Sometimes if you have a chapter that you want to get done right away and I haven't edited it yet, I'll send you the unfinished version. Just remember that there'll be, I'm not a professional video editor, so it'll come to you a little sloppy, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 1 and chapter 2. The questions you'll have in the test about chapter 2 is who can use the realtor symbol? Only people who are members of the Realtors. Does the real estate commission get involved in commission disputes between agents from different companies about like who is the procuring cause? The answer is no. That's what the Realtors get involved in. Procuring cause disputes between competing Realtors. Not the real estate commission, but the Realtors settles that. Remember, the real estate commission is a quasi-governmental agency. It works underneath the Department of Banking and Insurance. The Real Estate Commission was created by the New Jersey Licensure Act, which created the Real Estate Commission. On the test, there's going to be about 30 questions on Chapter 3. The test itself is given at PSI. The closest one to us is in North Brunswick, at the shops at North Brunswick. And again, you have 1 year from when I sign you out to pass your test, get fingerprinted, and get licensed. 1 year from the time I sign you out, you pass your test, get fingerprinted, and hang your license. Although in this current Corona situation, they have been giving extensions. But let's not plan on an extension. Let's take your test and get your license. Okay? Don't be afraid of a test. If you fail the test, you can take it again. You have to pay for it again, but you can take it again. And sometimes taking the test is a very good educational tool anyway. All right, so the New Jersey license laws is also known as Title 45, Chapter 15 in the New Jersey Legislative Code. Who wrote the law? The New Jersey Legislature. The Real Estate Commission then goes and fills in all the rules and regulations. And one of the things is they say who must be licensed. Well, anyone who takes part in a real estate transaction in New Jersey for another person for a fee, commission, or other valuable consideration must have a real estate license. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule. We'll get to those in a minute. Licensees are governed by the Real Estate License Act, which is also known as Title 45, Chapter 15. That was written by the New Jersey legislature, as it's all laws in New Jersey. And the rules and regulations are set up by the New Jersey Real Estate Commission. The New Jersey Real Estate Commission is made up of 8 members who are appointed by the governor. So out of the 8 members, 5 members are real estate brokers who have been licensed as such for at least 10 years. So I've been licensed as a broker for 20 years. Someday I could be on the Real Estate Commission. There are 2 members out of the 8 that are from the general public. That means they don't have a real estate license. And there is 1 member who represents the Department of State. That 1 member was known as the governmental designee. That 1 member does not have a real estate license and serves at the pleasure of the governor. So that means every time there's a new governor, they replace that member. The types of licenses you can get in New Jersey. You guys are here for a salesperson's license. You guys are here for a salesperson's license. I have a broker's license. My wife has a broker salesperson's license. What a broker salesperson's license means is that she has met all the qualifications to be a broker, but she chooses not to open her own office. Instead, she's going to work underneath my broker's license. If you guys get your licenses and you pass your test, you're get fingerprinted, and you don't have any criminal background, you're going to hang your license. And if you hang your license with me, you're going to work under my broker's license. That's what being sponsored by a broker means. It means I'm going to take the responsibility for you and for everything you do under my broker's license. So again, my wife has a broker salesperson's license. If I made her mad, she could send her broker salesperson's license back into the Real Estate Commission. She could send it back in, and she could become a broker herself, but that would mean she'd have to open her own office. She would be a broker herself, but that would mean she'd have to open her own office. So again, I have to be nice to her. We have a question here. Let's get to the question. So a broker salesperson can create a property management company, but it is going to have to be underneath a broker's license. So if you're going to create a broker property management company, you're going to be a property manager, and you're going to get paid a commission, which means a fee to manage properties. You're still going to have to work underneath a broker's license. So you're still going to have to hang your license with the broker. Your broker is going to be responsible for what you do, and you'll work under the broker's license. So in order to be a property manager, you're still going to need to get a broker's license. Now you could be hired. You could be hired by an apartment complex to be an employee of the apartment complex and get paid an hourly rate and have your pay not be dependent on any fee or any commission, just an hourly rate. And in that case, you would not need a salesperson's license either. If you handle other people's money, then you're going to need to have a salesperson's license and work underneath a broker. All right, so again, the 3 types of licenses are a salesperson's license. That's what you guys are here for. A broker salesperson's license, that's somebody who has met all the qualifications to become a broker, but they have chosen not to open their own office. And then you have a broker, somebody who's met all the qualifications to be a broker and has chosen to open their own office. So again, in my world, I'm the broker. My wife has met all the qualifications to be a broker, but she has chosen not to open her own office. So she's a broker salesperson, and she works underneath my license. I sponsor her license, and all the salespeople that work for me, I sponsor their license. They work underneath my broker's license. And so my responsibility is for all the salespeople and all the broker salespeople. There's other broker salespeople in my company besides my wife, and I'm responsible for them too. Real estate license activities requiring a broker's license to list and sell real estate, to sell, exchange, buy, auction, or rent real estate, to collect rent, to solicit prospective purchasers or sellers, to negotiate a real estate loan, to sell lots for a developer, to sell business opportunities that involve real estate, or attempt to do any of the above. As a salesperson, you're allowed to negotiate, purchase, sale, or exchange of real estate, negotiating certain real estate loans, lease, rent, and collect rent, sell lots for a developer, but underneath the broker's license, underneath the broker's supervision, underneath the broker's license. Okay, so as salespeople, you'll be allowed to do all this stuff, but you're going to have to be working underneath a broker's license. Let's see if this is another question. No, that's the old question. Now, who can do certain real estate type related activities and get paid a commission and not need a real estate license? Well, of course, owners. For sale by owner doesn't need a real estate license. So owners handling their own property. And then all of these people in this next category are people who are acting underneath the auspices of the court. So attorneys, executors when you have a will, trustees, receivers, that's when you have a bankruptcy, administrators, that's when you die without a will, legal guardians, that's when you're under 18 or you're insane or you're not competent and somebody needs to do a real estate matter for you, and others handling real estate under the order of a court. For instance, the sheriff selling things at the sheriff's sale. Those are all people who have an exception and that can do real estate related activities without having a real estate license. Also, bank and trust companies and insurance companies. Bank and trust companies may end up with property that they have to dispose of, or under deeds of trust, they may have property that they have to dispose of, and they can get paid for it. And an insurance company like PMI companies like AIG may end up with a property after a default, and they have the ability to dispose of it with getting paid a commission. So those are other exceptions to that rule of who can get paid some kind of consideration for selling or doing something with real estate without having a real estate license. Those are the exceptions. Payment for service. This is a very important point. In order to be able to collect a commission, you have to be licensed at the time the service is performed. So part of what this real estate law does is it helps the real estate broker protect their commission from sellers or buyers who want to get out of paying the commission. And if you're licensed at the time you perform the service, you can sue for your commission. So in order to collect a commission, one must be licensed at the time the service is performed. So what if a seller decides to stiff you and says he does not want to pay your commission? What can you do? You can sue for your commission. All right, you guys are all in the salesperson's class. What are the qualifications to be in the class? You have to be 18 years of age or older, and I assume you all are. You have to prove a high school education or its equivalent. And the way you prove it is you check off a box that says, did you graduate from high school? So you're going to check off, yes, I graduated from high school. You have to successfully complete a 75-hour class. That's what you're doing now. You have to disclose one's social security number for child support enforcement purposes. You cannot be more than 6 months behind on child support. You have to provide documentation of citizenship or legal residence in the United States. All they do is they ask you to check off a box that says, are you legal? You have to pass a state examination. The state examination is given by PSI. Talked about that earlier. And then once you've done all this and you've gotten fingerprinted to prove that you haven't committed one of those crimes that was on the special screening questions when you first signed up, you need to be sponsored by a broker. In other words, a broker has got to take responsibility for you. The qualifications to be a broker: you have to be 18 years of age or older, high school education or its equivalent, furnish evidence of good moral character. You have to have served 3 years full-time underneath the broker working as a salesperson. So you have to have served 3 years. You have a 3-year apprentice requirement underneath a broker. And that is with no more than 20 hours a week in any other job. You have to complete a 150-hour course. Now, you guys are in this 75-hour course now. To become a broker, you have to take a 150-hour course. Again, you're going to disclose your Social Security number for child support purposes. You're going to be legal in the United States, and you have to pass a new exam. Same 110 questions. They're just harder questions, and you have to get a higher score. So those are qualifications to be a broker or a broker salesperson. Because when you complete all of these requirements to be a broker, when you complete all of this stuff to be a broker, they ask you, do you want to be a broker or do you want to be a broker salesperson? You can choose either one. If you're going to be a broker, you're going to have a business account, business checking account, and a trust account. If you're going to be a broker salesperson, you just have to find out what broker you're going to work underneath. Now, he said that you need to have 3 years experience immediately preceding your application as a broker. If you are an honorably discharged war veteran with a service-connected wound or disability, you don't have to serve the 3 years. And that's why you can be a broker at 18, even though you need 3 years experience. The reason you can be a broker at 18 is if you were wounded or disabled in the military service, they waived that 3-year requirement. Some people don't have to take the class to become salespeople. The Real Estate Commission may agree to waive the education requirement for someone who is a licensed broker from another state. They're not going to get their broker's license in this case. They're going to get a New Jersey salesperson's license. Somebody who previously was licensed as a New Jersey broker within the past 5 years, but they let their license lapse. Now they can get started again and become licensed as a salesperson, but without going to class. Someone who has taken equivalent real estate courses in college. And Penn State is a college that has a major in real estate. Also, New Jersey attorneys, if they are in good standing with the New Jersey bar, they don't have to take the class because they probably had more than 75 hours of real estate in law school. And certain applicants who took equivalent pre-licensing courses in other states don't have to take the class. You took a licensing class in a state that had 75 hours, then you don't have to take the class. Now, we have a weird situation because New York used to require 60 hours classes, so they did not have reciprocity. They did not have reciprocity. So they did not have reciprocity because our classes were 75 hours. Now, New York's class has gone up a little bit in hours, but we still don't have reciprocity with New York. And since we don't allow New York agents to become New Jersey agents without the class, New York doesn't allow New Jersey agents to become agents without the class because we don't have reciprocity. Those special screening questions that we asked you when you first signed up, they will run your criminal background check, and they'll look for anything that you've been convicted of. But if you've been convicted of these things within the last 5 years, forgery, burglary, robbery, any theft other than shoplifting, criminal conspiracy to defraud, or any other like offense, you will not be able to be issued a license for at least 5 years after your conviction. You also have the obligation, if you're convicted of one of these crimes, well, actually, you have the obligation if you're charged, just charged with one of these crimes, you have the obligation to let the Real Estate Commission know that you were charged. And they may, under the circumstance of these crimes, they may be able to pull your license just upon you being charged, not even being found guilty. And you have 30 days to let the Real Estate Commission know that you were charged. If you're convicted of other things, you have to let the Real Estate Commission know within 30 days. And the Real Estate Commission may pull your license depending on what you were convicted for. But on these, the Real Estate Commission can pull your license just for you being charged, even though you haven't been found guilty yet. part of what the criminal background check does, what the fingerprinting does. All right, 3 years experience for a broker's license, no more than 20 hours in any other job. Both the broker's license and the salesperson's license, you have 1 year after you finish class. Pass your test, get fingerprinted, run a criminal background check, and hang your license. If you live in another state, you can still get a New Jersey license, but you have to sign an irrevocable consent of service. An irrevocable consent of service means, since the Real Estate Commission has the authority to subpoena you, if you're down in Florida and you have a New Jersey real estate license and they want to subpoena you, they don't have to go to Florida to subpoena you. You automatically consent to your service, to the service of the subpoena. The next thing is corporations. If a corporation is the owner of a real estate company, then the broker of record has to be an officer of the corporation. So the corporation that owns my companies is me, but it's Best Realty LLC. So I'm the broker of record. So I have to be an officer. I have to be a signing officer. So I'm the president. That means if I was to sell the company to somebody and that person was not going to be the broker of record and they were going to keep me on as broker of record, they would have to make me an officer of their company, because whoever is the broker of record has to be an officer of the company, the corporation that owns the real estate office. All right, we also have examination that's given. The examination for a broker's license is PSI. For the salesperson's license, you have to score 70% correct, and that means you have to get 77 correct. For the broker's license, you have to score 75%, and 75%, let me do the math real quick, 75% of 130, of course the phone's not on, so we'll have to, 75% of 130 is 70, and 5% of 30, right here. So for the broker's class, you have to have 75%. I used to be able to do math in my head, guys, but today it's been a long day. So out of 130 times 0.75, you have to get 98 correct. Okay? So you guys need to get 77 correct. That's a 70% score. Get 77 correct. All right, a temporary license is something that's issued to a brokerage, to a company, if the licensed broker dies. If the licensed broker dies and there's no other broker in the office, the licensed broker dies and there's no other broker in the office, the people in the office can apply for a temporary broker's license in order to keep their office operational. In order to apply for a temporary broker's license, the person who is making the application for the temporary broker's license has to have at least 3 years experience, and they have to apply for that temporary broker's license within 30 days. So if you have a real estate brokerage and only the broker has a broker's license, no one else has a broker's license, and the broker was to die or to go insane or to become bankrupt, they can keep the office open by having somebody else in the office apply for a temporary broker's license. That temporary broker's license, that person has to have at least 3 years experience. They have to apply for it within 30 days, and it gives them 1 year for that person to take their broker's class and get licensed. It gives them 1 year for that person to take their broker's class and get licensed. And that's a temporary broker's license. And I've had a couple of friends who own real estate offices and they passed away. So this kind of stuff does happen. So this is just the way the Real Estate Commission fixes it so that that office can remain open and not have to foreclosed, put all those people that work in the office out of work. When you first get licensed, you're going to make a contribution to the Guaranty Fund. The Guaranty Fund was established to reimburse members of the public who suffer a monetary loss due to wrongdoing in a real estate transaction by a licensed broker or salesperson or an unlicensed employee of a broker. When you first get licensed, you're going to put $10 into the Guaranty Fund, so a one-time payment of $10. And when you upgrade your license to broker or broker salesperson, you'll put in another one-time payment of $20. And into that fund is maintained in the real estate commission. If a person is financially injured by a real estate agent or broker or employee of an office, they can make an application and get compensated up to $20,000 for their claim. In order to get that $20,000, though, first they have to sue the real estate agent or broker that injured them. They have to get a judgment, and then the agent has to refuse to pay. So there is a process you have to go through to get that money. So if you sue broker or agent and you get a judgment from the court and then they refuse to pay, then that person can make an application and get up to $20,000 for his whatever damages there were, up to $20,000. And if they ever have to pay, because of you out of that fund, if they ever have to make a payment out of the fund for something you did, you lose your license, and you cannot get your license back forever until you pay back the fund. So if you do something so bad that they have to give somebody a $20,000 payment, 10 years later, you want to try to get your license again, before they'll give you your license back, you've got to pay back the $20,000. Now that money that's contributed into the fund, in this guarantee fund, that all those $10 and all those $20, that stays in the real estate commission in a kind of a slush fund. I don't want to say slush fund in a bad way, but it stays in there and it's used for the education of real estate agents and real estate instructors and licensees. The next thing we want to talk about real quick is in the New Jersey Act, the Interstate Property Sales Full Disclosure Act. And we talked about that already with the federal. There's a federal law. This is the one that says if you're selling properties from another state in New Jersey, and there's at least 100 residential properties that you're selling, you have to have a New Jersey broker of record, you have to have a formal prospectus, and you have to have a 7 calendar day period of rescission. A 7 calendar day period of rescission. The Bureau of Subdivided Land Sales must approve certain out-of-state properties being offered to New Jersey residents. And we talked about that also in the federal laws affecting real estate, because there's a national law that's called the Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act that does the same thing as New Jersey law. The next thing is rental referral agencies. So in towns like Hoboken or Jersey City, typically it is the tenant who pays the commission when they rent an apartment. In Middlesex County, typically it's the landlord who pays the commission when you find the landlord and tenant. But in Jersey City, in Hoboken, it's typically the tenant. So the way these rental referral agencies work is, let's say you're looking for an apartment that's a $2,000 a month rent. So you're going to come into the rental referral agency and you're going to pay them $2,000 to find you an apartment. They get to keep $25 of it as an administrative fee for signing you up. The other $1,975 has to go into the trust account, because it is not the real estate agency's money until they find you an apartment. Okay, so $25 can go into their operating account, $1,975 goes into their trust account. Now, what do they give you for your $2,000? Well, in towns like Hoboken and Jersey City, they give you a list of landlords that have apartments. And you call those landlords and you will go around and you look at the apartments. And when they finally have an apartment where you agree to a lease, then they have earned the other $1,975. When they find you an apartment, then they've earned the other $1,975. since you're just giving the tenants a list of properties that are available, the real estate broker or agent has a responsibility. The responsibility is they have to make sure that every one of those apartments that are on the list are still available. Otherwise, they're giving you a list that's not worth anything. And they have to have permission of the landlord to have the landlord's property included on the list. Now, you guys probably have not heard about this kind of a working situation, because in Middlesex County, it's the opposite. But in Jersey City and Hoboken, it is the tenant who pays the commission for a rent. Okay. So we said it was going to be a short class tonight. We're going to stop here, and then tomorrow night we're going to do the chapter on appraisals. What I'm going to tell you about the chapter on appraisals is that I am going to send you a fact pattern for the appraisals tomorrow. So as we do the appraisals, we're going to spend a little bit of extra time on kind of coming up with the different methods of coming up with an appraisal and the actual way that you might do it. We had a couple of properties that we had appraised this week, and all of them created problems because prices have gone up so fast. The appraisals have not been able to keep pace with the increase in prices, which is a problem. So we'll kind of take our time on that tomorrow night. The chapter on appraisals is important. We're not going to be appraisers when you get licensed. That's a different class and a different school and a different number of hours. But you're going to need to be able to price properties correctly so that you can advise sellers of where they should price their properties and what they can expect in terms of a net when they sell it. And also at the same time, if you're working with buyers, you want to be able to appraise properties so you can tell buyers potentially what they should be making offers on the property. What is a reasonable offer? Appraisals is a hard chapter because it has concepts in it and it has math in it. So concepts and math make it a hard chapter, but it's a really valuable chapter that can separate you from other real estate agents once you get your license. Because if you can talk clearly, succinctly, with intelligence about appraisals, you will be able to give your sellers and your buyers confidence in you. Because sellers and buyers, part of what they pay for you when they hire you as their agent or they use you as their agent is your ability to give them really good numbers of what the value of certain things are. An appraisal is a very subjective process, which means it's more of an art than it is a science. And there are people who have real estate licenses who do things called BPOs, which are brokers' price opinions, and they do these for banks, and the banks will typically pay about $60 per broker's price opinion. And there are people who do enough of those BPOs that they make $100,000 a year just doing BPOs. So again, if you just want to sit home and be very quiet and do BPOs, there is an opportunity for you to do that. You're going to have to do it underneath a broker's license, and you're going to have to be very careful about how you negotiate your commission splits, because if you're only getting paid $60 a BPO, you certainly do not want to have your broker take half of that, because it doesn't give you much money for your time and effort. All right, so
Hey,
we're going to
Bruce.
stop here for tonight. This is just a short little class. Does anybody have any specific questions? Again, tomorrow night we're going to do appraisals. If anybody has a special request for Wednesday night's class, please let me know. We are going to, tomorrow night also, we're going to hit a few more of those things that are on the test that we did on our last class. Some people sent me messages they liked that, so we will hit a few more of those. And somebody's asking me what chapter is appraisal. Pull that chapter out.
Hey, Bruce. Hey, Bruce. Hey, Bruce.
So appraising is chapter 22. Appraising is chapter 22. And let's find this other thing that we want to see here.
Hey, Bruce.
Trying to find where this pages that have this list of all the things you need to know is in the book. The book is not cooperating with my fingers tonight. As you know, there's questions in the back of the book. There's questions in the front of at the back of every chapter. There is a glossary at the end of the book that's very helpful. The content outline for salesperson, broker, and instructor exams starts on page 585, 586, 587, 588. So if you want to look at those pages to see everything you're going to need to know, that's wonderful. But we reviewed the stuff on page 585 all the way up to 585. We'll start on page 586 to start the class tomorrow night, just to review some of those things again. And those are speed reviews. Okay. So everybody's on mute. You can unmute yourself if you have a question. Let me see if I can unmute everybody. I don't know if I can do that. No, I can't unmute everybody. If you have a question, I can unmute you specifically, but you can unmute yourself too. Is it Sonia that wants to be unmuted? Let's find you in here. But
Hey, Bruce.
there's Sonia. Sonia, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Sonia. It's not
I
me.
assume you got unmuted. Do you have a question, Sonia?
Someone else was trying to ask you a question. That's why I
Don't see it.
catch that. Yeah.
No, I'm good.
You good? Okay.
But
No,
again,
I'm
you're
good.
welcome to type it in the chat feature. All right, so tomorrow night is a regular long class, not a short class. So I'll send out the invitation first thing in the morning, but it will be the chapters on appraisals. It would be, well, the lecture will start at 6:30 tomorrow night. And we'll start on page 586, and we'll start going over a couple of those required fields that you're going to have to know, and then we'll do the chapter on appraisal. I will be sending you an email with some comparables and with a real appraisal so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll also do a value by income property. I'll send you a spreadsheet that I created for value by income for properties in New Brunswick and how we come up with values for those. And we'll go over all that tomorrow night. So that's it for tonight. Didn't have many questions and certainly didn't have many, did not have many comments, but we'll see what we can get done tomorrow. Here it comes.
Thank you.
I think
Yeah, chapter 3 will be another night on a long class. Chapter 3 is a very important chapter because 30 questions on the test for chapter 3. And it's much more detailed than the beginnings of it than I went over tonight. So yeah, we will do that on another class. Just for the short class today and for some of the people who just got started, I wanted to hit chapter 1, 2, and the very basics of chapter 3, just to get you warmed up. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, then that's it for tonight. See you guys tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.